Oh, things can happen so quickly and make me film a quick video again. Suella Braverman's chapter in the British government is over. After serious allegations from the Secretary against the London police, Prime Minister Sunak pulled the emergency brake and she's gone. This sets off a personal shake-up in the government. So, the British Prime Minister is now restructuring his cabinet. The controversial Home Secretary or Interior Minister Braverman must go. And with the appointment of David Cameron, Sunak is causing quite a surprise as well. As I said, in Great Britain, Prime Minister Sunak has fired the controversial Home Secretary Suella Braverman, and Foreign Minister James Cleverly will take over her post, as the head of government's office announced last night. Former Prime Minister David Cameron is surprisingly making a comeback in the cabinet as the new foreign minister instead of Cleverly. And British media wrote that it was very unusual for a former prime minister to return to a government. And just a few minutes after Cameron's appointment was announced, the former prime minister made a long statement to X, you know, that Twitter thing. And Cameron wrote, among other things, that he was happy to accept Sunak's request. At a time of profound global change and crisis, it has rarely been more important for this Britain to stand by its allies, strengthen partnerships, and ensure that the country's voice is heard. And even though he has not been at the forefront of politics in the past 7 years, Cameron said he hopes to use his many years of experience to help Prime Minister Sunak deal with the many challenges. Remember where he was on the Brexit stance? Even though he may have disagreed with some of Sunak's decisions, it was still clear to him that Sunak was a strong and capable Prime Minister. Well, Cameron, who ran 10 Downing Street from 2010 to 2016, was seen entering Sunak's seat on Monday morning. And according to observers, the British Prime Minister's decisions are part of a larger cabinet reshuffle. Chancellor of the Exchequer or Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt should remain in office, as the British Guardian reported on Monday morning, citing Downing Street. This is not a big surprise because Hunt is already scheduled to run at least until Downing Street's spring budget. Environment Minister Therese Coffey, however, announced her resignation. Now would be the right time for her to leave the government. Before her time as Environment Minister, Coffey was already Minister of Health and Minister of Labour. Well, Sunak had come under pressure over Braverman. Indeed, you might have seen my video yesterday before the announcement came. The right-wing politician Braverman has repeatedly caused controversy, most recently because of the criticism of the police handling of the pro-Palestinian demonstrations. And last week, she accused the police of ignoring pro-Palestinian mobs. And she described demonstrations calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip as hate marches. Right-wing demonstrators scuffled with police officers in London over the weekend, and critics accused Braverman of stoking tensions. And Braverman was considered a promising candidate for the party leadership if, as expected, the Conservatives lose next year's general election. The ruling Conservatives are far behind the opposition Labour Party in the polls, and there was speculation that she wanted to position herself as the candidate of the right wing of the party by criticizing the police and with other right-wing populist statements, and perhaps even intentionally caused her to be fired. It was the biggest privilege of a lifetime to serve as Home Secretary. I will have more to say soon, is what Braverman reportedly said. Braverman, not Braverly. She had repeatedly caused a stir in the past with her right-wing populist initiatives, and she once described it as a dream to see a plane with asylum seekers take off for Rwanda. The British government wants to deport protection seekers of all origins there directly in the future, without their asylum application being examined. The people should instead apply for asylum in the East African country and stay there. So far, however, this has failed due to resistance from the courts. And Braverman's dismissal was met with approval, but also criticism from the Tories. Braverman was fired because she told the truth, said MP Andrea Jenkins. Would be a bad decision by Sunak. Well, Braverman served as Home Secretary under Sunak's predecessor Liz Truss. Back then, in October 22, she had to vacate the post after sending confidential information from a private email address to a member of parliament, so breaking the codes there. And despite being kicked out of the cabinet again, Braverman is still considered a promising candidate for the party leadership. In that case, what we all expect, that Sunak will lose big against Labour. The Conservatives are so far behind Labour at the moment. That's why everybody thought she was doing all of this on purpose, because she is quite right-wing, but I don't think that she's stupid. And the getting fired intentionally thing is something I think it's possible. But the first voices from the opposition were heard on Monday morning congratulating Sunak on his decision to fire Braverman. Health Minister Will Quince also resigned during the government restructuring. He has already decided to resign from the House of Commons in the coming election to concentrate on his training in the army, as a statement said. In addition, the Minister for School Standards left office. And in a post on X, Nick Gibb justified the move by taking on a diplomatic post. But let's talk quickly about Cameron. Cameron resigned as Prime Minister in 2016 after the British voted to leave the European Union in the referendum he had called. At the time, Cameron campaigned for his country to remain in the EU. And with parliamentary elections next year, time is running out for Sunak to gain favour with voters at all. As I said, in recent polls, the Labour position led Sunak's Conservative Party by around 20 percentage points. And they most recently lost 2 constituencies in by-elections in July. And the Tories are struggling with the consequences of a series of scandals under former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who, among other things, ignored the COVID rules set by his own government. But they were optimistic on Monday. Today, Rishi Sunak strengthened his government team to implement long-term decisions for a better future, said the Conservative Tory party at X. But is David Cameron any help there? As I said, David Cameron served as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 2010 to 2016. He was the leader of the Conservative Party and formed a coalition government with the Liberal Democrats. And Cameron's premiership was marked by a number of significant events, including the 2011 London riots, the 2014 Scottish independence referendum, and of course the 2016 Brexit referendum. In 2011, England experienced a series of riots following the death of Mark Duggan, a black man shot by the police. The riots caused widespread damage and disruption, and Cameron's government was criticized for its handling of the situation. And in 2014, Scotland held a referendum on whether to become an independent country. Cameron campaigned for Scotland to remain part of the UK, and the referendum resulted in a victory for the Unionist side, with a promise to stay in the EU. And in 2016, Cameron held a referendum on whether the UK should leave the EU, so the European Union. He campaigned for the UK to remain in the EU, but the referendum resulted in a victory for the Leave campaign. Cameron resigned as Prime Minister shortly after the referendum result. With this, Cameron's legacy is quite a complex one. He is credited with leading the Conservative Party back to power after 13 years in opposition, and he's also credited with overseeing a period of economic growth and stability. However, he's also criticized for his handling of a number of issues, including the 2011 London riots, including the 2014 Scottish independence referendum, and including the 2016 Brexit referendum. And we must not forget that he caused this for his own survival in his party, so to speak, and then just ran away. And now he's returning, so we will see how much that will help. And we definitely will not have seen the last of Suella Braverman. That I'm absolutely sure about as well. And the infighting in the Tories, I'm not a prophet, but my feeling says that it will get even more started now, of course. And as I said earlier, that Braverman did this to get fired. That wouldn't surprise me. Because in the to use the word the Brexiteers always love, in the shackles of the government, you cannot act as freely against the Prime Minister as you can if you're not part of his government. And I don't think that she will regret not being in power for this 1 year at all, when she can put the full blame on Sunak. So there are a lot of possibilities out here. And the only bad thing is that she will not be in office when on Wednesday the court ruling on the Rwanda stuff comes out. That would have been a fun part when she was still in office, I guess. But we will see how the court ruling will end, and she might still comment on that. And I still haven't seen a long statement from her. I quite spontaneously had to set up this video because everything happened quite fast once again. Nevertheless, if you want to see something else, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.